Hi, I'm Randy Robison. Welcome to Life Today. I have here Seth Haines with me. He's the author of a book called Coming Clean. Seth, thank you for being with me.
Thanks for having me.
Just to give people the short end of it, because I don't want to dwell here too long, although it's kind of what we're talking about. You hit a real tough time in your life. Alcohol was your refuge.
Yeah.
And it, instead of being an escape, it became a prison.
Yeah, that's right.
What do you think? Why do you think you were given into it? How come you allowed yourself to be put in that position in the first place?
Yeah. Well, I grew up in a family that didn't really balk too much, my extended family, in drinking in moderation. And so after I was 21, I began to drink in moderation, mostly for business reasons, but around the house also. So alcohol was present in my home. And then, as you said, I went through a pretty tough patch. And the story, my son, Titus, my youngest son, became really ill. And we were rushed to a children's hospital. And we spent a couple weeks in the children's hospital. And we had prayed for him for months and months before the children's hospital. We prayed for him in the children's hospital, and I was not seeing God move. And it was at that place where I said, I'm not going to saddle God with success or failure. We've been praying for all this time. Nothing's happened. And if God doesn't answer this prayer, then what does that say about God? And the pain was so deep that at that point I just said, I don't want to feel anymore.
Yeah.
And so that's why, I really gave myself to drinking in that moment.
You just checked out.
Yeah.
Was there a point when you realized, okay, it's no longer an anesthetic, it's a problem?
Well, there were several months, after, probably about a year afterwards, where I was drinking really heavily, probably, 6 to 12 drinks a night, depending. And it was an anesthetic.
Every night?
Every night.
Goodness.
And there was a season there where I tried to give it up before Easter, and I made it about 3 days. But
Right.
Otherwise, it was every night. And Amber, my wife, had been asking me, is this becoming a problem? Do you need to give it up? She wasn't really aware of how much I was drinking.
Yeah.
But I didn't see it as a problem at the time. It wasn't until I was in Austin, Texas, speaking at a conference, and I was in the lobby of a Methodist church.
What, business conference or religious conference?
It was a religious conference. It was a conference for activists. We were getting together to talk about orphan care issues and clean water projects.
So it's not quite preaching kind of deal, but it's quasi-religious.
Yeah, quasi-religious.
But still,
yeah.
you're
A little bit of it. I was teaching on orphan care ethics, and I'm a lawyer, so it was a little bit business, a little bit.
Were you drunk
religious.
teaching, or were you teaching and then getting drunk?
I was sober when I taught, and then I would drink afterwards.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I was there at this conference, and I was standing in the lobby, and I had a friend who was walking across to me who was a recovering alcoholic, and I felt God say, as clear to me as we're talking, that you can either take care of this now or it can be a real problem. And that was sort of the epiphanal moment when I realized, I had a drinking problem.
You check in somewhere?
No, I did not. I got back from the conference. I went back to Fayetteville, where I'm from, and I immediately called a therapist. My church at the time has a therapy group that works out of the church. And I called the therapist there, and he said, well, come in Monday and let's begin to walk through this together.
So you walked out and you're doing great now?
Yeah, it's been 2 years now.
2 years?
2 years, September 21st.
Yeah. What has been sort of the shift in your thinking that you don't need to go back? Have you faced the hard questions? Have you dealt with the pain?
Yeah, and in Coming Clean, this is what I talk about. I talk about sitting in the pain, feeling the pain of life. To go back a little bit, the story that I had as a child, I had asthma really badly. My parents took me to a faith healer, and it didn't work. Didn't work out for me. And so I had sort of had this cloud.
It's because you didn't have enough faith.
And that's what he said. He said, if you have enough faith, how much more faith can you have than a 6-year-old, right?
I hear you.
So it didn't work out for me. And so my entire life, I'd had this lurking question of, does God heal? Is God real? Does he intervene? Does he abide?
Deep questions.
And those are painful questions. And I was raised in a context that didn't allow me to ask them. And here I was in my mid-30s, and all of a sudden all this pain comes to the surface with my son's sickness. And the one thing that the therapist said is you have to sit with your pain.
Yeah.
And so he
And
walked
you
me
have to
through
ask
the
the
process.
questions.
Yeah, you have to ask the questions. And as you sit in the pain, and as you ask God to speak to you in the pain, what you find is that He answers. He is an abiding God.
So you've gotten more answers now than you had before.
Oh, absolutely. I had no answers before.
What has that done? Because I mean, it sounds like before your faith was not sketchy, but it was a little shaky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I would say it was put on a little bit.
Yeah.
There were aspects of my spirituality that I didn't want to deal with, the questions I didn't want to deal with. There was pain I didn't want to deal with. And what this process made me do was sit in that and grow an authentic relationship with God instead of just sort of these, form answers that we sort of throw out.
Yeah. What are the biggest answers you've found?
The biggest answer that I've found is that you have to sit in your pain. You cannot run away from your pain. As a follower of Jesus, what we see is in the garden, He prays, God, take this cup from me. And He prays it fervently. And who can pray with more faith than Christ? And God says, no, son, go through the pain. And as He goes through the pain, and as He hangs on the cross, He looks over the people who are crucifying Him, and He says, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. And that's the lesson I've learned. You have to go through the pain. You have to look at the pain agents in your life and say, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They didn't do it on purpose, for the most part. And you have to forgive. You have to live into that.
Why write the book? Why tell your story?
Well, I didn't actually set out to write it as a book. That Coming Clean is 90 days worth of my journal entries. And I was scared to death. I'm a writer. I've written my whole life. I was scared to death I wasn't going to be able to write when I sobered up. And the girl who helped sort of be my sponsor in the time of what I call Coming Clean said, sit down and write in your journal every day and do it as creatively as you can. And what you're going to find is that there is a freshness to your creativity. So I sat down and I did this for 90 days, and I had a good friend at the time who was asking me if I had anything to pitch to a publisher, and I said no. And he called me back 3 weeks later, and he said, do you have anything to pitch to the publisher? I said no. And he called me back a week later, and he said, I know you're lying. Send me what you have. So I sent him the journal, and that's what became the book.
What do you think the readers get out of it?
I think what they get out of it is this is not about addiction. It's not about sin management. It's not about drinking. It's not about anything in particular, right? We all have our addictions.
Yeah.
Alcohol,
Our different
materialism,
escapes and all
sex, yeah.
that.
All these things. And as those things are agents to anesthetize the pain, we're not allowing the Holy Spirit to come in and minister to us in that pain.
Yep.
So what I hope the reader takes out of it is sit in your pain. Learn to listen to God in the pain. Learn to follow Him into the path of forgiveness and come clean.
You know, the interesting thing, I don't know how, if you mentioned the faith healer. I've been around a lot of charismatic circles, and it's kind of funny because faith or in a sort of a religious fervor can actually be that alcohol.
Yes.
It can be that escape where they try to go get something that's artificial and they don't actually face the pain. And some of it's the very thing you ask, which is, do I not have enough faith to get healed? Well, God's wanting to push them deeper. Yeah. But so even a religious thing can be that same kind of thing.
This is one of the things that I actually speak about is you can create theologies. Yeah. You can create systems that explain away the action of God and explain away the working and the abiding presence of God. And that in and of itself is just another way of creating idols.
And sometimes just as damaging as addiction
Absolutely.
And other substitutions. Really good. Just a side note. You know the whole thing about creative people and writers especially?
Yes.
Drugs and alcohol.
Yes.
They say this is so I can be more creative and
Yeah.
to free me up. I think it's only because you're stoned or drunk you actually think you're more creative than you
No,
are.
that may be true. That may be true.
But you found some creativity in your sobriety. So that's just free for you guys. Where can people find out more about you? I'm curious about some more of your writings in addition to your book. And where can we follow you?
They can find me at sethhaines.com, and you spell the last name Haines.
Got it. Got it on the screen.
Great. Perfect.
So you blog, you tweet, do you do
I
Insta
blog, I
stuff?
tweet. You can find me at Twitter and Instagram at Seth Haines.
Cool.
And I have a Facebook writer page, and you can find me lurking around various magazines and publications from time to time.
Great. Appreciate you taking some time to lurk around.
Yeah, thank you.
Here at Life Today.
Appreciate it.
And
Thanks.
yeah, I appreciate
Thank you.
that. I want to tell you, you need to meet his wife, and you need to hear more about their story together. It's intriguing, and it carries on from where we kind of started. So you want to see that. They're on Life Today. You can see that show right now at lifetoday.org.